Hello, everyone. This is the Kubernetes SIG cluster lifecycle cluster API office hour. Today is Wednesday, 24th of May. Few notes before starting. This meeting abide to the CNCF code of conduct, so please be kind with each other. If you want to speak, you can use the raise hand feature of Zoom, which is under reaction. And we have a meeting agenda document, which I'm posting on chat. Here it is. If you cannot access the document, you have to join the SIG cluster lifecycle meeting list, and here it is, the link to the SIG cluster lifecycle meeting links. In this document, we have a section for today meetings. So please start adding your name to the attending list so we can keep track of the participant. And if you have topic of discussion, feel free to add them to the agenda. So with that, we can kick off today's meeting. And as usual, at the beginning of the meeting, we give some room to new attendees to introduce themselves. If someone is new to the meeting, want to say hi to everyone, want to say why they're here, why they're interested, please feel free to speak up. I give some time. Okay, I don't see hand raised, so let's keep going. So, open proposal readout. So we have, as far as I remember, we have only one open proposal, which is make cluster infrastructure optional from Jake. I know that Jake cannot attend today, but he left a message in the Slack chat that he did some recent work on the proposal. So if you're interested, please take a look and comment on it. Question, comments on open proposal? Stefan.
I think, sorry, I'm not sure if I saw it correctly. Yeah, I think the feature group doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, you are right. We close the feature group, manage Kubernetes. We can remove it. It was decided to close the feature group because basically the output of the feature group is the proposal that we are discussing. So the task has been completed. Kudos again to everyone that worked at it. Okay, let's keep moving. Discussion topic. Stefan, you have the first one.
Yeah, just quick PSA. Can you click at the second link first? Yeah, so basically control runtime 0.15 was released yesterday for everyone in providers, etc., who is about to bump. There are a lot of release notes. There are probably a bunch of changes that you have to make, but most of them should be very straightforward. I also added something to our migration notes in cluster API in the PR where I bump control runtime. Basically just some, oh, here's a pitfall or two. And those are like the most important things that change. The plan is to merge this PR very soon. So I already have a few HTMs. I know of 1 or 2 people who still want to review. Yeah, I would assume that it merges maybe tomorrow, but probably this week, just FYI. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else to mention. So basically there's a bunch of information in the v1.4 to v1.5 migration document. Yeah, that's it from my side. I don't know if I forgot something important.
Maybe you want to comment. So I think that there are most of the changes are straightforward. I think to two changes maybe require a little bit of attention. One is the change of the behavior of the fake client that basically now is for it compute the deletion timestamp. I'm correct. The deletion timestamp is
yeah, I can summarize. So one change in the fake client is that it handles the deletion timestamp differently than before. So for example, but it's also in the release notes of the controller runtime release. Maybe you can tap to that and go and grab for fake client. Basically, it's not possible anymore to create a new fake client and pass in an object which has a deletion timestamp but not a finalizer. The one I'm talking about is that one here. Yeah. So basically, the fake client will just blow up if you give it an object with a timestamp but no finalizer, because that's something that basically doesn't make sense. Because usually that object is just garbage collected immediately. So whenever you, that's one change that I had to make whenever you're passing in something which is basically deleting. You have to pass it in either with a deletion timestamp and a finalizer, or you have to pass it in without a deletion timestamp and then delete it afterwards. But if you don't have a finalizer, that delete call, if I remember correctly, will just remove the object immediately. So what you probably want is creating the object with timestamp and with finalizer. And the other thing is that when you set a deletion timestamp, so that's for the initial creation of the fake client. Once that fake client is created, exists, and you do a create call on it, then the deletion timestamp of every object that you pass in is just ignored to match the upstream behavior. Yeah, so that's roughly it. More details on the PR. I think there was also a small change around update and patch calls. Basically, that when you do update and patch calls, which result in an object which has a deletion timestamp but no finalizer, the object is removed from the fake client. It's just gone afterwards. Usually, tests are failing pretty hard with that change. And then there was another change, which is the first find here of resource search. And that is basically that the fake client handles this, is now able to handle a status sub-resource. Let's call it like that. So per default, for all call resources, it knows which resources have a status and which don't have a status. And if you have CODs, then you can tell the fake client when you create a fake client, oh, this, I don't know, the cluster COD in cluster API has a status sub-resource. The consequences of that is that the update and the patch calls will work accordingly. So if you do an update on the patch on a normal client and you try to patch the status, that won't work. If you, you have to use the status sub-resource client as usual. So you will probably also notice that because tests will just fail. Yeah, maybe let's leave it at that. If you have problem adopting, just mention me somewhere. I can take a look. Important, there's also the PR that we have in Core Cluster API. So basically, you have like 10 or 12 individual commits there, which are trying to adjust to various changes. So you can probably just look there what you have to do because of which change in control runtime, or at least a bunch of them.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much. This PR and all the work in preparation control runtime is really valuable work. The changes are really, I think that are good improvement, and they unblock a lot of, and also future work in controller runtime that possibly will lead us to have a better multi-cluster support and possibly also a patch helper from controller runtime. But yeah, let me say, this is the initial work, a lot of work there. I pointed out to the, thank you very much, Stefan, for doing so. I pointed out the two changes in the fake client, because in review of the PR, those are the most surprising. Everything else is just more or less refactor. Those one led to some fixes in the tests and require a little bit of work. Stefan?
Yeah, so the good thing about this control runtime bump is that I would say for 99% of the things that you have to do, you either end up with a compile error or a panic or a failed unit test. So it's there's very, very little which could be just missed implicitly, and your testing is still green. But I would definitely recommend reading at least once through the controller runtime release notes.
Okie dokie, thank you. So, question for Stefan? Okay, let's move to the next point. Yuvaraji.
So this is a follow-up from last week's discussion about the machine set pre-flight checks. I just want to add that based on the discussion that we had last week, we now decided to have all the machine set pre-flight checks behind a feature gate. This feature gate will be alpha and therefore will be off by default, which means there won't be any changes to any of the existing behavior of how machine sets work or machine deployments work. And we can leave it up to the users can decide if they want those additional checks by just enabling the feature flag. And even after you enable the feature flag, you can still do, you can still skip the pre-flight checks on a per cluster basis using the annotation. So that still stays the same. Now that we have this feature flag, it will probably give us a little time to also look at how the Kubedium versions queue can be evolved, and it will give us time to adapt to the version changes and so on. Yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much. Question, follow-up question for you, Raji? I just want to add that we did some research about the Kubernetes profile check that we discussed last week. So one note is that we need to implement the, no matter of the changing in Kubernetes, we need to implement the profile check in Cluster API, because in Cluster API we support also older version of Kubernetes and Kubernetes. And so even if we do a change in Kubernetes, it will affect only from a certain Kubernetes version moving forward. And so that means that we still need a profile check. Great. So thank you, Yuvaraji, for keeping this effort moving. Let's move on. Cecile.
Hello. So yeah, I just wanted to ask, I've been answering a few questions on Slack lately from users asking, is there a Helm chart for CAPI? And this has come up at least like 3-4 times, I think, in the recent 2 months. Has anyone ever considered this? Has there been any previous discussion on, I know there are several Helm charts out there that folks have are using internally or maintained. I found a few just Googling online. Has there been any thought into having an official CAPI Helm chart to install Cluster API? I know that there's a Cluster API operator, but that's a bit different. Just wondering, is there a good reason for not doing it, or is this just a matter of someone taking it on and doing the work and maintaining it?
Stefan?
Oops, just 2 points. I think one thing which makes it a little bit more complicated is that we have some logic in cluster cuddle upgrade. So I think it's important. If I remember correctly, we had the last like edge cases 1 or 2 years ago, I think. But I think it's important that providers upgrade in the same order. Otherwise, you can end up in a situation where essentially your upgrade is deadlocked because the providers can't start because, I don't know, conversion webhooks are not working. I think it mostly happens if you go from one API version to another. But we can search for that somewhere on PRs and issues. So that was one thing which makes it a bit more tricky. And I think the other question is basically, would it, I mean, just in general, is that Helm chart only for core CAPI? And if not, which providers would we include? Or is that like an extendable thing? I think just something to answer in general if you want to have an official one. And of course, I mean, if we include something, we need test coverage, et cetera, and our test coverage today is entirely focused on testing cluster cuddle. So that's also something we would have to figure out.
Cecile?
Yeah, that's a good point about the upgrades. I think I can look a bit into that. For the provider thing, I think it would be up to each provider. Just like each provider maintains their infrastructure components, I would expect the repo to be attached to the Helm chart. So like CAPI repo would only have CAPI core, bootstrap provider, KubeADM, control plane, KubeADM, and then other providers, if they want, can optionally maintain a help chart, but it's not something that CAPI would be able to do on its own.
Richard?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for the CAPI operator was for that whole upgrade scenario. And the CAPI operator now does have a Helm chart. So people could deploy it via the Helm operator and still have, the correct upgrade path, just as an option.
Cecile?
Sorry, actually, let other folks go first who haven't spoken.
David?
Yeah, sir. I was just going to say, definitely there's the kind of the split between the core management cluster CAPI stuff, which obviously the operator helps a lot with, versus the actual definitions for the providers, right? And so, it feels like kind of almost two separate things.
Yuvaraji?
Just wanted to say that in Cluster we also have some logic around CRD migration when providers are upgrading CRDs and like dropping old versions. I wonder how that would work with Helm charts.
Cecile?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I'm hearing mostly some concern around upgrade, technical details of how we handle the upgrade ordering and the CRD migration. I'd like to ask the question a different way. Is there any user in this call who is installing CAPI not via cluster-CTL? Like, anyone have experiences to share using either the operator or their own Helm chart, or anything that you want to share about your own experience installing CAPI and upgrading it?
Mike?
Yeah, so we are installing at the moment via Helm chart that we kind of hacked together from the customize code to install some flavor of stuff on top, using ASO or ACK, depending on the cloud provider. Though we are concerned about the upgrade process a little bit as well, and are looking at the operator. Though we're not quite sure the state of the operator for how stable it is for actual production use. From an upgrade perspective, we don't have a good story for that. The plan kind of was to run through the upgrade steps in the non-production environment with the cluster CTL pre-flight stuff, see what it says, and then make the decisions based upon that. Have it be more human before just blindly doing an upgrade. I'm all in favor of a Helm chart just personally, because we do Helm for everything versus customize. It gives us a little more flexibility for our environment. But if I know there's a big split out there in the community between the two, Helm and customize. If there's a way to somehow provide both, just as things get rendered, I think that, to Stefan's point here in chat, having to maintain two separate ones would be a huge pain. And I think things would get missed. So unless there's automation to support both automatically, I think that we're going to end up with some deltas somehow in the process.
Thank you. I had two comments from my side. So I think that definitely there is a need, there is an ask, and I see it for a better story with regards to cluster API and GitOps, with two dimensions: cluster installing and managing cluster API itself with GitOps, and installing and managing clusters with GitOps. So definitely, I agree there is the need. I share the same concern about from Stefan and Yuvragi, because basically Cluster Cattle now is handling is making sure that upgrade works. For instance, make a simple example. We are doing, we are stopping to serve V1 Alpha 3. And Cluster Cattle is handling the migration of everything is V1 Alpha 3 for the users. And so this prevents basically users to get blocked. But say that, my biggest concern is that, okay, assuming that we get these, we need a team that maintain it, and not only a team that makes sure that we have a end-to-end test over it, like we do for everything else. We have a pretty good, high quality and good coverage, and I think that's the bar for it. If there is a team that is committed to maintain it and to not only maintain the M chart, but also maintain end-to-end tests that prove that the M chart works and upgrades from the version under support, I'm fine with it. Community is asking for it. I don't know if someone else want to add. Cecile, you got a good round of feedback.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I guess one last thing from what's going on in chat right now, folks are saying that the CAPI operator is what, one of the main goals is to help with GitOps, and maybe we should recommend that as the official way to deploy CAPI with Helm. Is there any reason why that wouldn't suffice, I guess, for the folks that do have Helm chart use cases? Or I guess, Stefan, if you want to go first.
No, I think let's wait for if someone wants to answer to your point, and I go after.
Okay, so is the main issue with the CAPI operator the maturity, the fact that it's listed as development status experimental?
I see Richard and then Stefan.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons, and it just needs a bit more help with it. There's only a few people that have picked it up more recently. It had a little bit of a low period of contributions, but people are picking it up again, which just needs a bit more help to get it a bit more production ready.
Yeah, I think that a good follow-up is to engage with the cluster API operator to see if they feel confident to, and maybe they can host the M chart basically, and be the environment that tests them. Stefan?
Yeah, so I think one option how this could work is essentially that we're saying, okay, in the end, Cluster Cattle code is always the thing which deploys or upgrades a cluster API. And if I remember correctly, the operator is also just using Cluster Cattle as a library, or at least that was at some point it was working like that. I mean, that's one way to go. And I think the other one is essentially slightly reverse engineering what sort of magic Cluster Cattle is doing for upgrades. So, I mean, one thing that we definitely know because it's relatively new is the CRD migration thing, which is something which is relevant in edge cases. But the other thing is also ordering constraint. I don't know if there's much more. Probably a bit, but I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it's not that much. So what I'm wondering essentially, can we get to a point where it's really as simple as deploying cluster API providers and the provider CRD and that sort of stuff, just by YAML file, and if you update, you just update the YAML file. It doesn't matter in which order you do it, because I think if you can get to that point, I mean, you have a lot more options than today. So I think we could unlock essentially use cases by making it simpler and by getting rid of some constraints which are handled by Cluster Cattle today.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. We can aim to. It falls into making the GitOps story better. Just to give a little bit, as far as I remember, Cluster Cattle, the only thing that Cluster Cattle does on top is enforcing consistency of version, so you cannot pick up a version that are not compatible one another. And then it adds some magic on top, like, I don't know, image overrides, stuff like that, which are useful, but nothing that cannot be done with any templating engine. So I think that the biggest value is version compatibility, but this is something that people can decide to take ownership. Ordering, which probably it was decided because it hides some problems that could happen, and CRD migration, which is an annoying problem.
Just one small addition. Just one small addition. I think the CRD migration thing, for example, could be. It's probably not a big blocker, because I mean, this, if I remember correctly, in Helm you can run certain stuff at certain points in time. So basically, you could have some sort of job basically, which just runs classical as a container, and in classical we have a subcommand which does CRD migration or something like that. So I think that's probably a relatively okay-ish way to integrate a CRD migration if people want to make that part of a Helm chart deployment. The ordering is probably a bit harder, especially if you, I mean, with the kind constraints, you need ordering between various Helm charts if every provider has its own Helm chart. So that's probably a bit tricky. I know it only fades in edge cases, but then it fades pretty hard. So that's probably why nobody really complains about it from all the people who are using Helm charts today.
Okay, so what we consider as a follow-up for this one, Cecile, just a discussion. We aim to have I don't know, a document to engage with the operator folks and then eventually write a proposal. Seems good. Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on with our agenda. Next one is Richard.
Just a quick one. It's the OpenSUSE conference starting on Friday. So if anyone's going, A, it'd be good to meet up. But B, there is a tutorial stroke workshop on Cluster API on the Saturday. So if you know anyone that's interested in Cluster API, feel free to send them to that session. It will be streamed live as well, but it's in the evening European time, so not so good. But yeah, if anyone fancies it, that's that one. It's about an hour long as well. And the second one is I just thought of is Whitney and Victor run this show where they do a stream called Choose Your Own Adventure, where they take a part of a path to production, and they have 2 or 3 technologies pitch you know, why they think their technology is the best, or their project is the best, and it's all based on the CNCF projects. And they are looking for someone to represent CAPI for the cluster provisioning part of this journey in this stream. So I'm not sure if I can do the timing. So if anyone would like to do it, I'm sure that they would both be very welcome of anyone volunteering. Good.
Thank you for thank you for this PSA. So if someone is around for the SUSE conference, but it is only just a question, it is online or in person?
It's in person, so in person in Nuremberg, and online via Jitsi. You don't have to register, you can just attend the sessions. Most of the sessions are very Linuxy, less about containers, but there is some container stuff.
Okay, so if someone is around for OpenSUSE conference, reach out to Richard. Otherwise, you can follow the CAPI workshop on online. And if someone wants to represent CAPI at this Choose Your Own Adventure online streaming, please reach out to the authors. Thank you, Richard, for the PSA. Okay, if there are no more topics for today discussion topics, we can move to provider updates. Joe?
Hey, just wanted a quick shout out. We released 090 earlier this week. Just a bunch of small little updates to kind of help some internal folk with some different cert issues and adding some metrics and things like that. So nothing major, but just wanted to let the community know we're still kicking.
Thank you. Congrats, and great to see Cluster API for Oracle Container to move forward. Is there some last minute topic that we want to add to the agenda? Kilian, do you want to, I don't know if Kilian is in the meeting, but
I'm here.
Kilian, do you want to give a little report about the work on flakes that you and the CI team are doing, which is super nice?
Yeah, can do. So yeah, we had as of the 1.4 release, so the most recent minor release, we had a pretty flaky CI. I think everybody was kind of unhappy with it. So we've been doing these sessions. A few people on the call have joined them. I just kind of post them in the public channel where we do a deep dive on one or another kind of flake. And we've gotten a good few fixes out of them so far. We just merged another fix, which we're hoping will fix one of our biggest flakes. But yeah, so we're working away on that at the moment. Hopefully we'll see things get a bit greener, but we've also added some flaky tests in the meantime. So there's give and take. But yeah, please join the sessions. They tend to be kind of informal, and just if you're in and around, we just post the Zoom link in the upstream channel. And as always, any help that anybody can offer, we post issues with the flaky test tag, I think, in the CAPI repo. So if you can follow along and anybody has any insight, be very welcome to help out.
So first of all, thank you for all the work on chasing flakes. Second, I invite everyone which has some time or interest to follow this session, and maybe Kilian, we can also add to the agenda meetings the links to the session when they happen, so people can they are a little bit more visible, but they are all linked in the SIG Cluster Lifecycle YouTube playlist, and they are a great session and big opportunity to learn how to debug a copy, how to run and to test local, etc., which is I think a nice skill to have because as far as I know, many providers are using the Cluster API test framework. And so we are using basically the same and debugging the same. So what we see in CAPI can be applied to provider as well. Okay, so we are at the end of our agenda. If there are no more topics, we will get some time back today. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice rest of the week. Bye-bye.